The Awakening, the Revised Edition, by Lilac Moon. Chapter 12, Ahsoka's Acceptance. Padme peered into the oven to look over the dinner she was preparing. When she had talked to her husband earlier on her private comm channel, and he had informed her that he had told Ahsoka, she had become both excited and nervous at the news. The Padawan would be joining them for the evening meal, and Ahsoka was very important to her husband, which meant she wanted everything to be perfect. Her worst fear was that Ahsoka would see their relationship as something ugly, or accuse her of stealing Anakin away. She knew that Anakin would choose her and the twins above all else. She wasn't worried about that. She was worried that he would lose Ahsoka's respect because of her, and she would no longer want him to be part of her life. She didn't want that for him, for she knew her husband loved his young Padawan like a daughter. Padme wanted Ahsoka to see how much she loved Anakin, and wished to grow close to her as well, as her husband had, so that, perhaps, she would come to love her as a daughter as well. She and Anakin were a family, and their family would soon grow when the twins arrived. The question was, would Ahsoka want to be part of that family? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Anakin's speeder on the veranda. "3PO, is the table set?" Padme asked. "Yes, Miss Padme, and a bottle of sparkling cider is chilling as well, just like you asked." 3PO responded. "Thank you, 3PO." Padme replied as Anakin entered the kitchen. He wore a contagious smile. He liked the fact that he had been able to tell at least one person about their marriage, regardless of what it meant. "You're happy?" she mentioned. His grin widened as he took her in his arms. "I'm married to the most beautiful woman in the galaxy, and we have 2 beautiful children on the way. What's there not to be happy about?" He grinned. She smiled as he managed to melt her fears and uncertainties away. "You're right. There is so much to be happy about, and so much to celebrate." "I love you," Padme said. "And I love you," he replied as their lips met with a tender passion, and his hand came to rest protectively on her pregnant belly. "Ahsoka's with you?" she asked. He nodded. "She's waiting in the living area with R2. Dinner smells great, by the way," he mentioned. "Thanks. I wanted everything to be perfect for tonight. I wanted to make a good impression on Ahsoka." Padme fretted. "You will, and everything is already perfect, because we're together," he assured her. "I know we still have a lot to figure out, but I promise we'll be together, no matter what. Trust in my love," he told her. "I do, more than ever," she replied, as she kissed him passionately to punctuate her admission. Their lips moved over the others desperately, as they kissed each other deeply, and passion swelled between them, promising that later, when they were alone, it would be unleashed fully. A timer on the oven dinged, interrupting their bliss. "Oh, I need to take that out," Padme said. "Oh, please, allow me, Miss Padme," 3PO interjected, as he hurried to the oven. She eyed her husband suspiciously. "He's been doing that all day, you know. He's barely let me lift a finger," she mentioned. "That's because I told him not to let you lift anything too heavy or strain yourself too much," Anakin replied. "Annie, I'm pregnant, not an invalid," she protested. "You're pregnant with twins, and you tend to overwork yourself. Not to mention that your condition will become more fragile. I am very attuned to you, and I can sense your pains," Anakin told her. "I want you to slow down," he requested. "I'm fine," she insisted, as she felt a twinge in her back that had been quite persistent all day. "Ow," she hissed. He smirked and came behind her, as he gently kneaded this knot out of the exact spot of pain on her back. She didn't have to tell him where the pain was. "Don't ignore the back pain or the swollen ankles, my love," he told her. "That feels good," Padme said. He held her in his arms from behind and kissed her cheek. "I promise to slow down, but only if you promise to give me a massage tonight," she replied. He smiled and nodded. "Deal. Consider it done, my angel," he replied. "Come on, we've kept Ahsoka waiting long enough," Padme replied, as they joined hands and went into the living area, while 3PO readied the table for dinner. Ahsoka looked around Senator Amidala's living area as she waited. It was beautifully decorated, indicative of Padme's good taste. R2 chirped beside her cheerfully. happy to be at home with both his master and mistress. She swore that sometimes the little guy actually had feelings, and her master would have told her that he did. "Did you know about this?" Ahsoka asked. Artu chirped affirmatively, and a word a string of clicks and beeps. She read her translator. "You were there at their wedding?" Ahsoka read. "Besides 3PO, he was the only one at our wedding. But it was still the happiest day of my life," Anakin said as he entered with his arm around Padme. "Mine too," Padme added, smiling at him, before turning her head towards Ahsoka. "Hello, Ahsoka." Padme greeted kindly. Ahsoka nodded curtly. "Hello, Senator." Ahsoka replied, "I think dinner is just about ready. I hope you're hungry." Padme mentioned. She nodded. "I am, thank you, Senator." Ahsoka replied politely, "Please, you can call me Padme." She responded. The Padawan glanced at her and then continued on to the dining room. Anakin noticed the worried look on his wife's face. "Don't worry about Snips. She'll warm up to you in no time. Trust me," he assured her, as they went to join her at the table. Dinner was very enjoyable, and Ahsoka had never really experienced good home-cooked food before. The Senator was a fantastic cook, and it was something Ahsoka would never have guessed about her. Anakin ate hungrily as well, always enjoying his wife's wonderful cooking. The dish she had prepared for tonight was as delicious as any. He had come to love shack meat, almost as much as bantha, if not more so. The two kinds of meat were very similar, but most cuts of shack were leaner, which made sense considering the animal largely fed on grass. Banthas were more carnivorous, feeding on desert animals and scraps out of necessity of their arid environment. The particular cut they were having had been filleted off of the bone, and Padme had marinated it in a special seasoned braise that was a recipe her mother had used for years. The meat was baked perfectly and very tender, with fresh Nabooan potatoes and vegetables in accompaniment. 3PO had visited the marketplace and purchased all the things Padme had needed from the vendors from Naboo, which had ensured there would be fresh shura for dessert. But first, their idle conversation would turn more serious as their eating slowed. "That was an amazing meal, Angel," Anakin told her. She smiled. "Thanks, sweetheart. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I love when I get to cook for someone." Padme replied, "Yes, it was delicious, Senator. I would never have guessed you were such a wonderful cook." Ahsoka mentioned. Padme smiled. "It is an unexpected talent that I have many people don't expect." "But I learned to cook long before I learned to debate," Padme mentioned. 3PO brought a tray and set down a bowl of fresh sliced shura on the table. "Thank you, 3PO." Padme said, "You're quite welcome, Miss Padme. I've also made up the bed in the guest room just as you've requested as well." 3PO replied. "Thanks, 3PO." Padme said again as she sipped at her blue milk. "I hope I wasn't being presumptuous, but I hoped you would consider staying tonight. Or any night, if you want, for that matter. The guest room is yours, if you'd like." Padme stated, "Thank you, Senator. That's very kind of you. But Padawans are required to stay in the dormitories when we're on Coruscant." Ahsoka responded. She didn't like the dorms, nor most of the stuck-up Padawans that were her age. They always looked at her master differently. And he was different, which made her different. And she decided that she wasn't going to fear that anymore. Her master had taken a huge risk by revealing his secret to her tonight. He had told her because he trusted her and loved her. Love was a very new thing to Ahsoka, but she did love her master in return. Not romantically like the Senator did, but more like a father figure. She had begun to realize this months ago, and had even felt ashamed when she had basically broken the code by allowing herself to have these feelings. But now she realized that perhaps her master could teach her about these feelings, since it was plainly obvious that was impossible to not have any feelings at all. But her master had changed in this manner over the last couple of years, and it was obvious to Ahsoka that he had learned something that no other Jedi had. There was contentment in her master that had not existed when they had first met. She just wished she didn't have to go back to the dorms with her judgmental peers. He usually preyed on those who were different, or whose masters had unconventional methods of training, like Anakin. "You can stay here with me if you want to, Snips," Anakin told her. "But I thought you said I had to stay in the dorms when we were on Coruscant." Ahsoka questioned. "No. I said it's recommended by the healers that Padawans active in the field stay in the dorms, and I had thought it would be good for you to interact with those your age. But you're too like me, and you're miserable in the dorms, just like I was at your age. And since you're my Padawan, I can choose for you to stay with me if you want. Anakin replied. Ahsoka smiled and nodded. Thanks, Master. And, milady. Ahsoka replied, nodding politely to Padme. Please, you can call me Padme. I know it might feel awkward for you to do so, but we're family now. Padme told her. Ahsoka nodded. Okay, she responded. You look tired, Snips. Anakin mentioned. I am. This was a lot to take in. Do you mind if I retire early? The Padawan asked. Not at all. R2 can show you to the guest room if you'd like. Padme replied. Ahsoka nodded. Thank you. Good night, Master. And good night, Sen. Padme. Ahsoka corrected herself as R2 led her down the hall. Do you think she'll be okay? Padme asked. Anakin nodded as he gently pulled her into his arms after they got up. She'll be fine. It's a lot to take in, but I can tell that she likes you. He told her. I like her too. She's sweet. Padme replied. And so polite and well-mannered too. Are you sure she's your Padawan? Padme teased. He raised one eyebrow playfully. You are so funny, Angel, he said as he tickled her sides, making her laugh. You know, Rex always asks me the same thing. He thinks he's a comedian too. And don't let Snips fool you. She can be a handful when she wants to be. Anakin replied, pretending to be wounded. Padme giggled. I'm sorry, love. You know I'm kidding. But let me make it up to you. Anyway. Darth Vader stood in the center of the training arena as he prepared to initiate the difficult training program his master had designed for him. He had been amazing, both his master and his creators, at his level of skill thus far. He was fully trained now, and as deadly as any Sith Lord, if not more so. Most would believe such a thing to be impossible. It was agreed on by Jedi and Sith alike that it took many years to develop skills like he possessed, whether it be in the ways of the Jedi or the Sith. Skills on both sides of the Force, light and dark, took years to learn and hone. But by the way of severe genetic manipulation and acceleration, he had achieved a level that most took decades to reach. When Count Dooku had brought his embryo to the Kimioan scientists, they were both intrigued and fascinated by the task requested of them. He was no ordinary clone specimen. He had been informed that he was the son of a Jedi with the highest recorded midichlorian count of any Jedi ever. But his master told him that his father was weak, and had chosen his love for a weak, force-blind woman over standing with his master. He had shunned all that power for an emotion that his master told him made a person weak. His father was a fool, and wasted a wealth of potential on his mother. She was insignificant and weak too, merely the vessel he had needed to get her. And fortunately, his master had rescued him from a life of benign insignificance, with them for a life of power. He had been training in the ways of the dark side of the Force since the day he could walk, and he had soaked up everything taught to him. Anger, hate, rage, and cruelty was all he knew, and all he wanted to know. Darth Sidious had seen to it that he was punished severely if he was unimpressed with his progress. As a result, Vader pushed himself to the brink of destruction from an early age. And as a result, he showed cruelty to those around him, often to his Kimioan caretakers. Not too long ago, he was at the stage that would have been considered 10 years in age. He had lost his temper on a poor caretaker for daring to tell him what to do. With sadism unlike Dooku had ever seen before, he had brutally beaten the female Kimioan with the broken remains of a lamp, which he had initially used to begin the terror-filled assault on her. But Master Sidious had been delighted by his rage. But Dooku had been wary. even trying to convince Sidious that he was unstable, and his fits of rage could end up being detrimental. Vader smirked. The old man had been afraid of him in his latter days, and Vader had feasted on that fear, and the fear the Kimeoans had of him. The first female Kimeoan was only his first victim, and 9 others had suffered brutal death at his hands. And they had done nothing except set his quick temper off by doing seemingly innocent things. But after his first kill, Vader developed a thirst for it. That's why he was eager to join his master. Sparring droids and smashing them to pieces didn't have the same thrill as slaughtering living, breathing things. He craved the taste of their fear, but his master had promised him that he would soon quench his thirst for blood, and he would start by murdering the man that fathered him. It was something Sidious had specifically asked him to do. He would catch him by surprise, and kill him before the shock of his identity wore off. While his midichlorian count of 19,000 was impressive, his father was a very real threat, being that his midichlorian count was over 27,000. But his father was still weak, because he wouldn't have the heart to strike his own son, which would ultimately be his undoing. The era of the Jedi will soon come to an end, Vader said, as he engaged in the grueling training program. The next morning, Anakin stood before the council, having been summoned there by Master Windu. Anakin was no longer quite as uncomfortable in front of the Masters as he had once been. There were many Jedi Masters that still did not like him, Adi Gallia and Pablo Gil being among his most outspoken critics. Shaak Ti, on the other hand, had always championed for him. He had always been quite fond of her as well. Seeing her empty seat saddened him, and he remembered how Grievous had ruthlessly murdered her right before his eyes. He noticed Obi-Wan's seat was empty too. He had already been dispatched on a mission to track the droid general down. He hoped his former mentor was successful in getting justice for all the Jedi Grievous had murdered during the course of the war. Mace put his hand up and the chamber quieted.
Anakin, as you know, we've sent Obi-Wan to find General Grievous. We would have liked to send you as well, but I'm afraid we have another mission that we need you for.
Mace began. Anakin nodded.
Chancellor Palpatine has refused to lay down his emergency powers and restore power to the Senate. I am afraid that we have grown mistrustful of him. He may or may not be under the influence of the Sith, and we need you to observe him for us. He has agreed to allow us to appoint a liaison between himself and the Council, but only if you are the appointee.
Mace stated.
Me, Master?
Anakin asked in surprise.
Surprise you, this does?
Yoda questioned. Yes, Master. While I was once good friends with the Chancellor, this has not been the case in the last few years. I too have grown mistrustful of him as well.
Anakin stated. Then you have done well in concealing your feelings, for the Chancellor still believes you to be a close friend.
Mace said. So you want me to spy on him? Anakin asked a little uncomfortably.
A last resort, we feel this is, but no other choice we have. Blanketed by a dark shroud, the Senate is. Discover the identity of the Sith Lord we must. Our best hope, this course of action is.
Yoda stated.
It is a matter of opinion, Master. We are not in agreement that Skywalker is the one for this mission.
Pablo Gil spat. Mace raised his hand.
Nevertheless, the majority has spoken, and discussion on this matter is closed. Our choice for this mission is Anakin.
Mace stated. I will do my best, Masters. Anakin replied with a bow.
Report to the Chancellor's office this afternoon.
Mace instructed as he dismissed the young Jedi Knight. Palpatine stood in his office, gazing out at the vast city before him. It would soon all be his, along with the rest of the galaxy. The Jedi fools were growing suspicious of him, but it mattered not. They would not see their coming demise until it was far too late, and none of them, not even the Chosen One, would be able to stop him. He had agreed to allow Anakin to be a liaison between himself and the Council,
and he knew the young Jedi would slowly discover the truth. It was exactly what Palpatine wanted. Anakin would learn the truth, and then he would be able to take him out in his surprise when he learned the identity of his new apprentice. It was imperative that Anakin was eliminated. If he lived, then it could jeopardize everything Palpatine had worked towards. The time for the Jedi and the Republic's end is at hand, and the ashes of the Republic will rise my new empire. The dark side will reign once again, and the galaxy will be mine. Palpatine said quietly to himself, as he saw the comm station blinking, indicating that Anakin had arrived. Palpatine smiled evilly. The look on your face when you find out that your son has taken the place on my side, the place that was meant for you, will be priceless. He will not fail where you did, young Skywalker, and I will be rid of you, and your troublesome wife, and the Jedi at last. Palpatine growled under his breath. The Chancellor is expecting you, Knight Skywalker. You may go in. Palpatine's kind Twi'lek receptionist said. Thank you, Anakin said, as he approached the office door. He stopped suddenly, as a cold chill slithered down his back, but as quick as it had come, it was gone. Anakin shook it off and entered the office. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. So next chapter is pretty intense, but I like this one. I like Ahsoka slowly sort of sussing out Padme and how kind Padme is to her. And the council is trusting Anakin with this mission, and he's not as whiny as he is in the movies. I love Hayden Christensen as Anakin. I actually really like the prequels. My whole family do. But, you know, I mean, I want to go and pick up some power converters. Yeah, the father of that guy would have to be a little whiny himself, wouldn't he? Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.